Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Let's hop in. Um, I did manage to finish the solo mode stuff for the most part. There's really not a lot of reason to continue to do solo mode stuff all the way to completion. They've also added some new missions here. We're still trying to struggle here and get to stage 20 by the 18th, which means 3 days, and that seems increasingly unlikely to actually happen. I'll show the solo mode stuff. So I made a couple of solo mode episodes. An incredibly long third chapter of this Legend of the Star Heroes, which is a narrative that's just like way longer than any of the others. And so yeah, at some point when I get to win 3 games in solo mode or play 3 games in solo mode, I'll just do this and this and then leave the rest. Well, ironically though, the other solo content that they unlocked is incredibly short, just like way too short. Although I wouldn't really hate if all the solo mode content really was this short. A introductory bit of narrative to explain one expansion of cards, and then a practice to teach how the card mechanic works, then one duel, then a harder duel, and a harder duel, 3-star duel, 4-star duel, 5-star duel, and then a finishing of the narrative. Like, that would make a lot of sense. Ironically, also, they experimented a little bit because the gate on this here, I believe, required you to earn a protector, which required you to go through this extra scenario. So it was more like you have to go to this scenario, then this scenario, then this scenario, then you can unlock that. And then one of the gates, I believe in the other solo mode expansion, I'm jumping all around, apologies for that. This one, nope, not that one. Well, there was a gate that required you to earn like 150 of the green secondary energy, secondary currency, and that required you to play with your own pre-built deck, whereas no rewards for the secondary currency have ever been in the pre-built deck. And then this entire solo player deck challenge too, I have to assume is just based off the second generation anime of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's the hero cards pretty much from beginning to end. So that I would assume that was the focus. And I'm actually a little shocked on how successful I was with the loner decks, to the point where I only have this one, and this one out of about 15 to actually accomplish. Yeah, regardless of all of that though, I did actually choose to play a little off screen. I didn't start recording any new thing though, and I needed to do that, and instead I've been distracting myself trying to make a Google spreadsheet for my VPN client's information, which is an interesting experiment / learning experience, and probably a colossal waste of time. Look at this. Inflict 8,000 damage for 40. That's quite the ask, but not really that hard either. I finished the Netflix Resident Evil series. Just god-awful series. Not really for the complaint of that first episode, which was a little weird. There were the first couple episodes, which was a little weird. The problem with it is they introduce this African American actor who's actually, I think, a pretty good actor, and has been in many other things, as Wesker. And spoiler for an awful series, he's not Wesker. He's a clone of Wesker. He never evolves into the Wesker you would have seen in Resident Evil 4 with the black coat and the hyper speed and infecting himself with T viruses and G viruses and the Ouroboros things and just making himself superhuman. That Wesker is shown for like half a second, and it is only at that point that they revealed that there were Wesker, the real Wesker, had just made a bunch of clones. Which inherently, this clone Wesker in this new Raccoon City that takes place after the events of the real Raccoon City has these two daughters who are genetically engineered to have their blood to maintain his body since he's a clone. Half of the Resident Evil series, live action series on Netflix, I guess you have to differentiate between the awful animated series or CGI series and the live action series. Half of it takes place far in the future after the zombies have just destroyed the world effectively, which really eliminates any desire or need to watch anything happening in the past. So you really can't have flash forwards and flash backwards in the zombie apocalypse, because then the general thought of will they find some way to survive or recover is out the window. Should I let that happen? Guess I can't activate the same thing twice in one turn. Interesting. Good to learn. But yeah, there's very obviously no connection to anything that really happened in any of the games. This is Resident Evil's in name alone. They occasionally show you a zombie or throw out a Easter egg to somewhat try and make it feel like it's connected, but no, there really is nothing Resident Evil there. Inherently, if you're going to make a Resident Evil live action series, I don't even know how close you have to really stay to canon, because it's not like the canon and storyline in the Resident Evil series is that important from game to game. So having the original Resident Evil mansion and having a Wesker and having the name Ada Wong mentioned at the very last second of the series or the season, none of that really means much. Like, inherently the problem here is they also are only mentioning the semi-bad guys and the bad guys in the series, while totally ignoring like a Leon S. Kennedy character or a Chris, or Jill Valentine. Those characters are kind of totally missing. There is no stars that shows up. There is no evolution of those stars characters, and those are the characters you would play in the game. Those are the characters you're going to spend the most time with. So it's almost like the premise of the show is, what would the Resident Evil universe look like if none of the good guys ever existed and it was just bad guy who works for Umbrella fighting against another bad guy who works for Umbrella. And I would think it would be fairly obvious after probably over a decade of Walking Dead TV shows that it's the people and the relationships that really kept that show going. So, starting with the premise of we're going to have two child actors or young women actors be the main characters, and be is really just dumb. There's not going to be action sequences with two young women that often. This really would have been a series where you potentially would have brought in a like Bruce Lee type Jackie Chan karate person, male almost certainly. If you could get a female who is very active in karate-esque, that would work. Or somebody that looks realistic behind a gun, holding a gun and shooting a gun, would work too. But I hate to say they needed some Jean-Claude Van Damme type or Arnold Schwarzenegger type, but they really needed that. It needed a touch of just good old-fashioned male macho-ness in it to make some sense. Raw feminism, I don't want to go on a rant here, but you're going to have to overwrite and overcompensate for that, certainly. And you just don't have that. Like, instead you have one girl who's at best a chemist / researcher, and the other grows up to be at best described as a kind of computer electric things. And that's all good and well to say there should be smart people, and even the clone Wesker is really more of a smarty pants than a fighter. But that's so far outside of the realm of any Resident Evil game. You could potentially make a good video game where you're just a researcher researching a zombie outbreak. Zombies are a known factor. You're not there to shoot them. If you do start shooting, you'll just cause a horde of zombies to attack you, so you have to do more of a stealth action. Those are all potentially interesting. That would be an interesting twist. That's just not what Resident Evil is, though. And so you have to still stay within the realm of what the namesake is there. Can I turn this around? This one's been a struggle. Did I watch anything else worth mentioning? Well, I'm watching that Fort Salem Motherland as the episodes are coming out, which this is the first return to kind of like appointment television that I've had in probably several years, if not 10 years. I've been doing a lot of side projects, fixing like my irrigation system. The wires came loose. I needed to have put it in a waterproof junction box originally, and that project just went so bad that I just wanted it to work and to see what happened. So that left me with fairly small wires, length wires that I had to trim and make even shorter. So I can't really do that. I decided to get some of the Wagyu wire connectors and try them out on low voltage connections in particular, that should be really a good and easy way to wire. And I have to admit, it was way easier than trying to wire cap any connection. So I think I probably will stick with just official Wagyu things. Make sure you get a high wattage AWG, like something that's like 10 or 12 AWG is probably a little too low depending on what you're wiring to it. I guess if you were wiring just low voltage LEDs, it doesn't matter, but if you're putting a high powered ceiling fan on a low wattage, you might eventually melt or burn the connection. And honestly, I don't know if any promises of wire nuts being cheaper really matter so much when you end up, if you're unskilled and you don't have a good pair of lineman's pliers, you end up inevitably going through 3 or 4 wire nuts to get one good connection in the first place. Particularly in the case of the irrigation system, that those needed to be special wire nuts that had waterproof gel in them, so I was already overpaid for them. But yeah, it turns out that my sprinkler system's wires were disconnected by some wildlife, or just by time, and so entire parts of my lawn have not been watered for could have been quite a while. It's hard to really tell. Actually, could be a very short amount of time too. It's been so incredibly hot. So I had to work on that. My countertop oven decided to break on me, so I bought a new one. The new one I got is really small. There is definitely a trade-off in I got something with a lot more features or claim features in it. But then I traded down to probably a little too small of an interior dimension. So I have a whole bunch of pots and pans that won't fit in it, but that was kind of the problem even in previously. And certainly that wasn't something I was expecting to break, because I've only had it for maybe 7 or 8 years. But I've got decent use out of it. Yep. And in all honesty, if I could just bend over and lift things and not hurt my back consistently, I should just be using my real built-in oven. It would be way more efficient since it runs on gas. Natural gas. Oh, and I changed out my front door lock from a U-bolt to a Wise Bluetooth auto unlocking door thing, and fingers crossed everything will work now, because that U-bolt never worked after the first time. It just absolutely refused to it just absolutely refused to recognize that somebody was walking to the front door and unlock. And I will say, even though the Wise was like 3 or 4 times the price, it does feel like it has more features. So there is something to that idea. Like an open door, closed door detection, which I'm not even sure how that really works, other than very possibly just a really accurate I don't even know how it's doing it. GPS would be my guess, or it just is always kind of monitoring where it is. That could also be the case. but like it has a door open, door closed sensor that means the second the door is closed, it instantaneously locks, and it can tell if the door is jammed or if the door is ajar. So there's a lot of stuff there. I didn't even really see that I could win there. Interesting. I got a replacement help by phone and I can't get up device for the Tuya ecosystem. Because the first one I got just went to an update and never, after like a whole week or two of trying every day, it never could find the update and download the update. I feel like I probably need to change my network settings a little bit still, but wasn't running into any real big problems. I just kind of feel like maybe I should increase the timeout on UDP and TCP connections a little bit higher, because there is a scenario, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I'm speculating about when you're watching Netflix, does that open a TCP or UDP port and then go for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, and then the port is disconnected, and then you get that half-second buffering, let's re-download things. Because I vaguely recall, and maybe this is just me not really remembering the past, that when streaming was first invented, you wouldn't have these hiccups in buffering that often, or at all. The buffering would all happen at the beginning, and it would consistently try to download and improve the buffering, and there's really not a reason why that wouldn't be even better now than 10-20 years ago. Alright, let's do this. Activate this to destroy all spells and trap cards, ruining whatever strategy he had here. What's going on here? Oh, so he's trying to do like a one-turn kill here, where the coin flip, it doesn't matter, because it's gonna just, anything that increases my life points is gonna turn to decreasing my life points. Well, that's a pretty unfair strategy. I literally couldn't do anything at all there. Like the very first card I played, I lost. And that's probably the first game we've seen that's really highlighted a potential scenario in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where the wild and craziness of Yu-Gi-Oh! Could lead to just a unfair action. I talked about this Zavi shop listing a Pokemon Christmas Advent Calendar pack, and I wanted to show what that was a little bit more. It's really expensive at $60. It's this giant box of Pokemon the Trading Card games, and inside the giant box is 2 of these, I think, 2 interior boxes, and inside each of the interior boxes you stick your thumb, I guess, through here and pull off a strip, and inside that strip is some sort of reward, small things. For $60 to get 2 sticker sheets, 2 flip coins, 8 foil promo cards with a festival stamp that may very well just be added after the fact and may not be like an official stamp. And I don't know if there really would be a guaranteed real value in having a festival stamp. And then 1 sidekick dangler, which I assume that's like a cell phone charm, is what that is. And then 6 Pokemon trading card game booster packs, and then 6 Pokemon trading card game 3 card fun packs, which I assume the 3 card fun packs have 3 cards in them and are not anywhere as worthwhile. Then you also get a code card for the trading card game online, which I don't even know how many people really are playing Pokemon the trading card online, since it is targeted to younger kids. I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't that many people actually playing online. Now, inherently, buying a single Pokemon trading card pack might be pretty expensive, and most trading card games are pretty expensive considering how they are targeted to little kids, and inevitably it doesn't make me feel particularly bad when a significant percentage of trading cards are just shoplifted and stolen by little kids. Kids shouldn't steal, obviously, but, or at least I'd have to make a much longer argument towards the idea that they should shoplift, and I'm not going to try to make that argument. But you can't really blame them if 6 cards are costing more than $6. Kids don't have money inherently, like not really. Even if they have allowances and doing chores, they really don't have money to kind of justify spending it on what are effectively rip-offs, like trading card games, cheap pieces of cardboard. And this advent calendar really goes even further in that direction, which is a shame, because I think had it come down to more like $35 or even $20, and maybe this is just inflation, really, but I could see some old, like, Pokemon trading card game booster packs being put in an advent calendar by a comic book shop and selling it for cheap to kids that really won't care about the fact that the old cards probably aren't playable or worth anything. There are way worse scams that happen as far as collectible card games, selling really old, worthless packs. Not old, like valuable packs. Let's see. Okay, did that ruin my strategy any? No. Let's see. Video Games Chronicles has, say, a reboot trailer and gameplay merged together. Is this the same thing we saw before? It is a little shocking. Yeah, I think it probably is. That something like Alone in the Dark hasn't been around successfully competing against something like Resident Evil. Resident Evil has just managed to own the genre of third-person shooting in a horror experience. And particularly at the points where the Resident Evil series decided to go more in the action sides, Resident Evil, like 7 or 6 in particular, that would have been a perfect time. This is a different trailer. That really would have been a perfect time to spin out your series, or an Alone in the Dark series, or just any other series in general. That could go back to the idea of more horror shooting. Now, I vaguely recall that in Alone in the Dark you did have a gun, but you had like a limited number of bullets you had to find. So, yeah, this trailer is not too different from the original announcement trailer. So now if you're just like consistently full on bullets, or you're not having to like save your bullets at all, that would be a little bit different from what Alone in the Dark was, but nobody really cares about what Alone in the Dark was. That's just going to be the truth of it, that Alone in the Dark is a good name, and that's all it really needs to be, is a good name to use and to make a new series. And since Resident Evil's story is stupid anyways, it's not particularly hard to make a horror game and copy the elements of Resident Evil. Resident Evil also goes with the idea of special zombies and the special zombies just getting crazier and crazier. Whereas Alone in the Dark is going to be more kind of just monstrous flesh monsters and skeletons, and not so much zombies alone. I guess also the lack of a Silent Hill game does leave you another opening to make something like Silent Hill. What's funny here, though, is that you'd almost think that Kojima, not Konami, would be involved in an Alone in the Dark game, or making his own game like that. But I don't see any evidence that he's involved at all. Let's see. There was a THQ Nordic showcase. Video Games Chronicle has a listing here of everything that was shown. Alone in the Dark, Tempest Rising, Space for Sale, Recreation, Gothic, Jagged Alliance, Outcast 2, SpongeBob The Cosmic Shake. This feels like this is probably nope, this is a new 3D platformer, not a remake of an old game. AEW Fight Forever, Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign, Destroy All Humans 2 Reprobed, Way of the Hunter, Stunfest. Feels like there's a little too many racing games, and the Valiant feels like there's a little too many medieval looking games. Which yeah, that seems a little weird. Inherently, this is the first step, I suppose, for THQ Nordic and Embracer Group to start to show the games that they have in development that they bought all those companies for. But it also kind of feels like they are just trying to be the new EA, or they are trying to be the old EA, just flooding the market with a lot of games. That notably, them having a wrestling game from AEW to compete against the WWE wrestling game from EA. But yeah, the original THQ went bankrupt making too much products, and I can't help but feel like this is the similar situation where they are actively overinvesting. But it's hard to really complain about overinvesting also, because at least they're investing at all. And they are trying to make games, and the number one complaint I have about most of the game industry is that they often are moving towards being a publisher. I guess this is one of the number one complaints, there's a couple of them. But a lot of companies are moving, trying to be publishers instead of trying to actually make games. And even though I look at hundreds of games every week, the number of games that look like anybody spend any energy on is always particularly low. So I got just enough in there. And let's attack. Really wish there was a third button that says not this turn. It's like cancel and don't ask until the end of this turn. THQ Nordic also teased a new South Park video game without really showing anything, according to Video Games Chronicles. Which I'd assume that there should be another South Park game. The Ghost of Tsushima movie director wants to film in Japanese with an all-Japanese cast, which that makes a lot of sense. Plus, that movie Prey, which is, I guess, a prequel to the Predator films, and has nothing to do with the Prey video game, either the original Prey video game or the second Prey video game. But yeah, the Prey movie had a bunch of First Nations actors, so there is possible more momentum than ever for something like that. Now, the problem I would be wary of doing something like that is this going to end up being a dubbed or fully subtitled movie? Because most people won't watch that, and then the movie will flop, and then they will say, well, we'll never do that again. Or can they even really get good Japanese actors to act in a way that people outside of Japan would really appreciate? Because when you look at the TV and live action movies and the way they're made in Japan, they never really have the budget. The actors, I don't think, are acting in the same way as you would want a Hollywood actor to act. And Hollywood sells all over the world, so there really is something to the idea of like The Last Samurai having Tom Cruise in it, even though you're hiring, you're kind of introducing this Westerner to a samurai story. And I think in the case of The Last Samurai, they put out a lot of good PR saying, well, this movie hired hundreds and if not thousands of Japanese extras. But yeah, probably don't put Tom Cruise in the Ghost of Tsushima movie, but maybe get a Japanese, second generation Japanese immigrant in somebody that natively grew up speaking English and can speak English very well. And maybe doesn't have such a tight connection to the Japanese cultures and mannerisms to the point where they would be off-putting to the West. But at such an early point in development, it also really would be kind of crazy to stand in their way. I think I'm more interested, success or failure, in just seeing them, the director and the movie makers, do what they want to do and not restricting or even giving notes or suggestions to the creators. So if the director wants to do the movie in Japanese with an all Japanese cast, I'd love to see that succeed. I'd be a little concerned that it would fail, but I wouldn't want to stand in their way. Moving on PT's 8th birthday, the person who delisted it speaks out. I wish it had gone differently. It was a tough situation all around. So are they literally going to name the person who delisted the game? Like, because that sounds like someone just asking for death threats against that person. So yeah, they've named him. The former Konami staffer Pearl L responded by claiming she'd been responsible for setting up the surprise release of the game on the PlayStation Store and also putting in the call to have it removed. Which at a certain point, if you stopped working at Konami, claiming you're the infamous person, even if it's not true, might get you some more followers or more attention. And I've never heard of this Pearl L before. Why would I know any staffers from Konami? But let's see. Do I have enough here? I don't think I do. Personally, I think at this point people are just talking about PT way too much. Like, people trying to turn it into almost like a tragedy, when really it was just a demo released and that a lot of people were interested in, and then was delisted when the game got cancelled. There's a lack of emphasis, I think, in most people's part around the tragedy of it being delisted, or of a game being so poorly handled that you would get to this point of making a playable teaser to announce the development of a new game, and yet still not be committed enough to actually release the game. But the bigger tragedy at this point is just how many people have talked about it. I guess the good news is probably the vast majority of people that have talked about it are just video game journalists. So it's really just wasting video game journalists' time more than anyone else's. Moving on, Video Games Chronicles says, reminder, 2 weeks remain before the 3DS and Wii eShop cards are blocked. So if you've got any eShop cards sitting around. Spider-Man PC enjoys a strong launch, but fewer peak players than God of War, which I could see that, certainly. Like, personally, I think I would be more interested in playing the Spider-Man game than the God of War game, because I feel like God of War is setting up for a sequel in Ragnarok that is not out yet. But obviously there was enough hype, there was slightly more hype around God of War coming to PC being the first big title to come, or being one of the first big titles, whereas Spider-Man is came out later on, where the hype would have died down. I could also see that a lot of people probably have played, maybe more people had played Spider-Man in the first place. An unannounced Avatar: The Last Airbender game has been listed on Amazon. The game appears to be coming to the PS4 and PS5 this year, which, yeah, this really is a franchise that has just been wrapped up, and in my mind, so it seems weird to come back and try again. Like, at this point, you almost would need to just remake Avatar: The Last Airbender or announce a third series. If anything, it highlights the fact that there's just going to be this need for cartoons in particular to work at a pace that Western animation companies are not willing to work at. Live Twin Home. Boy, does this look very anime-esque. It's like a desktop animation. Live Twin Key. Yep, that is inconsistent with the Yu-Gi-Oh art style, if there is any consistency in the Yu-Gi-Oh art style, which I say there really isn't. But yeah, Avatar: The Last Airbender should have been putting out cartoons non-stop. Nickelodeon should have been putting out cartoons non-stop. As soon as they wrapped up that first story, they were fairly good about putting the sequel story out, but after that sequel story, they needed to really put out a sequel story and just keep on pushing it. Compare that to like Yu-Gi-Oh, which has had 5 seasons with very little breaks, or Power Rangers, which has had a ridiculous amount of seasons with, I don't think, really any breaks. There's just a constant need for more content when trying to make cartoons or child's entertainment. And I feel like even the streaming services kind of fail at that. Disney doesn't seem to be really succeeding at that. As somebody who doesn't actually have Disney Plus and look at it, I'm not hearing any stories of like new Disney Plus cartoons coming out left and right. Netflix does get new cartoons, but they're all over the place and they're infrequent enough that you wouldn't really know about them. And Netflix isn't making like second seasons of cartoons. Instead, it's often just making short runs and then giving up on it. Nobody's really trying to do that Looney Tunes style where there's just a seeming non-stop deluge of Looney Tune cartoons being made or already existing. Although in all fairness, a lot of Looney Tune shows I watched when I was a kid were extremely old cartoons that were just being rerun, and there had just been decades previously of Looney Tune, Bugs Bunny cartoons that they were showing over and over again and just repackaging. They probably need to make a earthbending Avatar series, because like Avatar was the last airbender, and his companions were waterbenders, and the bad guys were firebenders. So I don't know if there was any characters that really did earthbending at all. Let's see. Moving on, a new Multiversus ad appears to confirm a Black Adam and Stripe from Gremlins, which, yeah, if anything, Multiversus may very well just become a platform to advertise WB properties new and old. PC files suggest that Marvel's Spider-Man had a multiplayer game. Game files reference co-op and PvP modes featuring Miles and Peter, which is interesting, but that doesn't mean they really got anywhere with that. Multiversus Season 1 patch, Bugs, Finn, and Velma nerfed, Arian and LeBron buffed. Sony could introduce PlayStation Net account linking for PC games and rewards, the file suggests. We'd already talked about that. There was a small fire, basically a cell phone or some other device was being charged, and it burst into fire at the Nintendo's HQ. The staff put the fire out before the 8 fire engines arrived, and interesting that a 8 alarm fire was called, but I wouldn't be surprised if in Japan they are super cautious with that. I wouldn't be surprised if there's considerably less like fireproof material in an old Nintendo building or an office building. I assume they have sprinklers, I assume they have micro smoke detectors, but who knows, really. I wouldn't be surprised if there's none of that. And yeah, it doesn't hurt anybody to be cautious and call out 8 fire trucks. Just in case, because if the building had reignited or gone up in flames, you would have needed that many fire trucks for sure, and there would have been a lot of people in a lot of danger. Ironically, it would be funny if it turned out it was a Nintendo product like a Switch that started on fire, but even at that, they probably just blame it on a unofficial charger or a fluke. And there is certainly a question about whether that's actually video game news. I don't think it really is. It'd be video game news if the fire actually damaged a lot of things or was going to delay games or actually burnt down the building. But to have a small fire scare in a video game office, video game developer's office, is not really news. If anything, it just highlights how video game journalists are desperate to have Nintendo in their headline when Nintendo is really not making anything for them to report on. Let's see, moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Take-Two is making a Middle-earth game with Weta Workshop. I feel like Weta Workshop might have something to do with Adam Savage, but maybe not. Oh, maybe not. This would be... Weta Workshop is the New Zealand company that created the special effects and props for all 3 of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movie, all 3 of the Hobbit movies, and the 2005 King Kong reboot. It's also involved with the upcoming Amazon Prime series, Lord of the Rings of Power, said to be the most expensive television series ever made. So it's a prop company, and maybe that's where Adam Savage, with his love of props, has worked with them or has collected some of their props, talked to them. Right now, Adam Savage is trying to make a a San Francisco maker event. Which, in a lot of ways, I guess it's him actively trying to have an event when social distancing probably still should be enacted or reenacted now for fear of monkeypox starting to spread a lot more. This would be yet another Middle-earth game, though, and it's like we're getting too much around the Middle-earth / Lord of the Rings universe already. There's a lot of concern about the level of quality of the Amazon Prime Rings of Power series. We have had as many failures as successes, if not a lot more failures, when it comes to these new classics, for lack of a better term. Like the Sandman Netflix series I thought was good, but then like the Watchmen TV series I heard was awful. The Boys series based on a comic is pretty good, but I don't know if it really is that consistent to the Boys comic, really. There's plenty of CW shows that pretty much just failed and been canceled. Plenty of Marvel and DC movies that didn't go anywhere. Let's see. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Unity has rejected the $17 billion merger proposal from tech firm AppLovin. The game firm will now push ahead with another merger deal with the company ironSource. The company has said the proposal was not in the best interests of the Unity shareholders, and it would now push forward to a previously announced deal to merge with another mobile tech firm, ironSource. So the board didn't put it up to an actual vote, which very possibly may not be doing their due diligence. So there's some... There is almost certainly, I would suspect, a lawsuit that's going to happen from this, because the shareholders are going to say, why did you reject this offer if it was financially for the same amount of money or more money, and go with this other company? What kind of cronyism, which almost certainly it is cronyism that's going on here, it is going on in the background that makes them want to sell to one company and not the other. Of course, at a certain point, I'm not sure it all matters that much either, because without either a lot of lawsuits or any kind of government agency enforcing rules, companies can basically get away with whatever they want to get away with. That did not work out the way I wanted it to. Also starting to notice that this card that guy was probably gonna win anyways. We're slowly making progress, but Like, we have till the 18th, and we want to get to 20. We're only at 14. Let's see, moving on. Video Games Chronicle says FIFA will be getting special Marvel Foot FUT hero cards, which sounds like it has something to do with microtransactions. Pokemon Center London pop-up store map reveals new products. Which, okay, I don't think I particularly care that much because particularly I'm not going to be in London. It's, I guess, important to mention that Video Games Chronicles is a UK-based website. Amy Hennig's Marvel game will be shown in September at D23. The company will show a sneak peek of the new Marvel Ensemble game, which, honestly, at this point, Amy Hennig's name is synonymous with failure, whether it's her own fault for not being strong enough or strong enough, I guess is the only phrase to use. It's either her own fault for not being strong enough to actually get products to the release window, or she is just this perpetual victim that is getting hired to start projects and then having her projects canceled underneath her. Either way, her name is definitely more synonymous with failure than anything else. And unfortunately, I don't know of a male creator or a director or producer that has that same stigma. So it does kind of feel like the gender card is being played either against her or she is playing it in her failures. Like, inherently, you wouldn't have 2 or 3 games in less than 10 years that don't launch and yet still have all this press. If anything, maybe it's a case more that she just gets too much press about her and she needs to try and find a way to cool press releases so that they don't mention her. Which you could do that by saying it's actually a team effort. I have very little involvement here. I'm just well, I have very little involvement, and I'm the producer is a hard statement to make, certainly, but I think she probably would be better off if she talked team, maybe gave some press interviews to talk about the team, maybe set up a protege to highlight and put other people out to put out press releases as the producer. Having your head game designer take some articles instead might be a good idea. I've never really seen a producer or a game developer, once they get their name out in the public's mind, even try to reduce their involvement that much. I suppose the Fable creator tried to do that a little bit after his multiple failures at making and finishing Fable 3 and just shooting his mouth off. Todd Howard is another person that has his name out there. Cliff Blazinski definitely had to leave the whole industry effectively just to get people to stop talking about him. The BioShock creator arguably had to disappear to get people to stop talking about him. But yeah, I think Amy Hennig is definitely in that category of people that is going to just have to try and figure out a way to disappear and get her name out of the headlines until she can get a product that actually releases. That is definitely hard to do. What do we want to do now? Guess what we'll do is this. I need to read these cards and figure out why, if I have two of them on the field, I can't summon multiple. Because that's weird. But I really don't have any free time at all to read cards. Okay. Well, that gets us somewhere. And then our last Video Games Chronicle article is Multiverses, Beetlejuice and Wicked Witch of the West seemingly confirmed in a patch. Over 2 minutes of hidden voice lines have been uncovered, which Beetlejuice was never really a kid's movie originally, but then the cartoon definitely made it kid friendly. And certainly in retrospect, I think most people would just assume Beetlejuice is supposed to be a kid-friendly product. I don't even know if the Wicked Witch of the West is really supposed to be that kid-friendly. Alright. Well, that destroyed everything, which probably lets me activate this. I've noticed that Chrome has a new thing where when you hover over a tab, it's showing you a full on little screenshot. I don't like it because that's just going to be close to impossible to prevent happening as I switch tabs, which means at any point I could click on a tab that is a game that's an adult game, hover over it, and then show something that is not YouTube family friendly. And inevitably there might be some way to turn that off, but I'm not sure that even turning it off would work for very long, because while you can often temporarily flip a flag in Chrome, Google Chrome continuously pushes you towards their design and their ideas. I've been watching on Amazon Prime also Paper Girls, which is another, I think, Brian K. Vaughan comic book adaptation. And yeah, I'm not really paying a lot of attention to it. I've had 2 or 3 things that I've started to watch and not been that interested in, which is probably good because I haven't gotten back to Zelda Breath of the Wild. I should have played it this weekend, but didn't have time. And I'm not making pre-recorded content. I should be making that. Alright, let's look at these games. Battlefield Priest, I don't think looks like anything of interest. Dark Blue Warrior. Now we've changed it, so we're going to start looking at games from any language except for exclusively Chinese. This one claims English and Chinese, so we still will see these kind of mediocre, low effort Chinese games at some level. Of course, there are also mediocre Western games. This is probably a version of that game Sherlock. Something, regardless, it's visually just too ugly to matter. Skeeter's good. And it's been another weekend, so I wouldn't be surprised if we ran into some adult content that came out over the weekend. Probably going to give it another week or two of looking at adult content, and then I will probably, at that point, flip the switch. Because I really am getting to the point where I just think my pretense may have been completely wrong, and arguably being human, I'm just grasping at straws at this point to see if there was any validity at all to my theory that Eastern games were being bundled every 2 weeks. Eastern visual novel games, Eastern games that had adult content were being bundled and released only on the weekends, every other weekend, whereas other adult games seem to be randomly released whenever the developer wants to release them. The problem at the moment is that there really aren't any Eastern adult games coming out. There's been a couple, and they've come out on Steam without even a mention that there was adult content or an adult patch to them. So that may just be the new normal too. Is that my theory may have been right last year or 6 months ago, and it may just be wrong now, and that Japanese and Eastern developers of games have just given up on even releasing uncensored versions. We've also seen some slight changes as far as this Fashion Police Squad might be something, so I'll leave it on the follow list. I also will make it short around that. Yeah, we've seen less RPG Maker games. I would assume this actually isn't anything, but I'll give it a follow just in case it is. I'm gonna give this a follow just in case. I'm starting to run into some different kinds of decks. So I wonder if new cards really have been added. I don't think they have to this game, so I don't know why the meta would have changed without a new expansion. And we still are mostly just running into garbage. Here you have a probably Western visual novel, if I was to guess. It doesn't look terrible. Free English, Spain, Spanish. So technically Western, but a little bit different there. Backpack hero. Is this a organization roguelike? Yes, it is. I'll put a fall. I'll make a short around that is unique visually. Really wish I could just script actions. Because like 9 times out of 10 this guy's not going to be able to do anything or want to do anything against this. Let's activate this effect now. But I don't think there's a way for these cards to put any of these cards in the graveyard. And in the turn. Arguably, it might be a mistake playing this face down card on the first turn, since you're highly unlikely to actually activate it on the second turn even. Let's see. Here we have Battle Rift, which doesn't look like anything. Oshiba. Interesting. Might be something to that. It's coming soon though, so we'll wait till it actually comes out. Just destroy every card. We have Maestro VR, which is not a terrible thought, certainly. I don't know if, honestly, I don't think being a Maestro, which that's not really what that is anyways, you're orchestrator, or, yeah, I don't know if that really is a career path as much as you need a PhD in music theory and teaching the college choir, and then being the teacher for the college choir. That's usually when you get to be the orchestrator. I guess at a certain point, if you're running a outside of a college orchestra, then the orchestrator may be the manager in general and the boss, but it really is highly unlikely that there's even 500 people in the entire world that actually make a living from being an orchestrator alone. Okay, let's do this. Put one of these on the field. And just out of an abundance of caution, I'm gonna banish that card. Then I'm gonna bring back this one. That one. That one. That one. Now this effect will reactivate. Well, it should reactivate when it goes to the graveyard, although it may not actually. Whereas this one won't activate because its effect is when it's summoned, not when it goes to the graveyard. The negation of something's effects only lasts as long as it's on the field. Let's see. And we've got it. And I don't see a way that I don't win here in one turn. Even though I am seeing some new decks and seeing some struggle, I'm also seeing what feels like a lot more reward. Wow, 5,000 gets you up to this point. This also implies here that there is a scenario where you could get 10,000 points playing some weird deck for a very long time, I would assume. Yeah, I feel like I'm seeing more victories than I once was. Here we have a tower defense game. Cliff Binfield tower defense is nothing. Cult of Babel prologue. I'm not gonna do anything with the prologue. This character looks slightly interesting, but maybe a little too much going on with the face being blacked out and then the arms and chest not being blacked out. That feels like all of that should be one way or the other. SCP Ground Zero is already mixed, so we can say no to that. Fireflies. This is probably a no. Yeah, if I was going to play a game where a character was shrunken, I don't think it would be considering something like this. It's coming soon anyway, so we'll say no to that. Let's see, Spectral Showdown. Doesn't look like anything. Then we have something called Nico Journey, which almost certainly is an asset flip game. They're calling it a Souls-like platformer. Just the name alone makes me want to not give it a chance. And looking at some of these screenshots, it does kind of seem like it is a side-scrolling platformer of not quite enough polish. In the turn there. Again, I placed this and probably shouldn't have. Let's see, Dominus Rage. This 2 is probably a no, but I'd be willing to give it a follow. Although I probably should do a little bit more follow-list cleanup too. Arguably, maybe you should do some follow-list cleanup at the beginning of a stream. It's hard drive game. Again, it's probably a no, and it's coming soon, so I'll wait. And then we get our first adult game. It came out, it says January 1st, so I don't know why. Nope, it says its release date was January 1st, 2022, and it still says coming soon. The game is called Pirates Golden Tits Chapter 1, which is a very poorly animated here, we'll show the screenshot. Just a very poorly animated collection of games. It's, with that animation style in particular, it's got the tag of hentai. I don't think anything here is hentai, unless, at least in the way that you would use that in the Western vernacular. Like, you really wouldn't call something that was lewd or pornographic but drawn in this terrible Western style. Yeah, you wouldn't describe that as hentai. Actual game seems to be maybe some dice mini games and some ship battle simulations, and that's it. In all fairness, though, I will say I kind of want more games like this, because I'd like to see this animation style and this concept improved upon to the point where there is a cultural touchstone of what a Western adult game should look like and how it should play, and it should be different and not just a clone of what the adult visual novels and Eastern adult games look like. But there's a sleaziness, even in the name, that is far too prevalent in Western adult material, and there's no like attempt to make a higher art or something that is beautiful, for lack of a objective term. That's a problem with even like live action porn, Western between like Japanese Shinobari in comparison, is, or Japanese still photography of porn, is that there's a real effort there to make that somewhat artistic and good looking, whereas Western porn is usually shot on a camera or a cheap camera, a cheap video camera, iPhone, and there's somebody with terrible makeup and tattoos all over themselves. Just hugely not interested in making something that's high art, and instead just trying to make the lowest of the low art, which, yeah. Try that again. Don't know why he's so desperate to destroy that card. Hey. Barely had enough there. We don't get that added value. but we can attack. Let's see. Moving on, we have Royal Roads 3 Portal, which looks like a resource management game of no interest. We have Ultra Clash, which is probably nothing, but I'll give it a follow just in case. Yep. Rhythm Tetris. I feel like there's already been Tetris Effect on Steam to do that, but I wouldn't hate a sequel. Dad's coming. Clean up your mess before your parents get back. I'm kind of glad to see that the "wait till your father gets home" phrase has mostly left the common vernacular, because your father is going to beat you for your bad attitudes, and the mother is not capable of actually disciplining children at all, as a concept was a bad thing that often was said or propagated. There was even a cartoon called "Wait Till Your Father Comes Home," which played it kind of tongue-in-cheek, but yeah, there definitely was implied violence there. Even at that, though, the idea that you have to clean up your mess before your parents get there is an indicator of not the best of relationships, certainly, isn't it? Like, ideally, you could you let your father see there's a mess and then say, "I'm cleaning up right now," or "I'm going to clean it up right now." Having to hide the fact that there was a mess seems unnecessary if you have a open communication, which maybe a lot of kids and their parents don't have open communication, and they do have to hide things. And kids inevitably will make messes and should make messes. It's just part of the growing and learning process. But I'm really preaching here around a very generic looking game where, yeah. See, I assume that this is a sister and brother. Yeah. Get items across the room to put things back the way they were, I guess. Co-op game. Next we have a generic shoot 'em up game. Asset flip garbage. I haven't seen that much asset flip garbage either lately. There's still plenty of it. Here's another one, but I think if anything, the pandemic has slowed down people just constantly trying to make a cheap buck, or the recession has slowed down people trying to make a cheap buck. See, Deer Nightmare, where you're being chased by deers. Why would you run towards the screen instead of away from the screen where you can't see what's ahead of you? Although I guess in this case you're running away from deer, so it would make sense to run towards the screen. This guy's just waiting for his time to run out, it looks like. Unfortunately, I just don't think there's enough of a game here. Being chased by deers is not a common fear for most people because most people have never had to deal with a deer chasing them. Idle Baker boss looks alright, but just an idle game. Here we have a game called Mirror Beauty. Mirror was one of the top selling games as far as adult games on Steam a year ago or last year. So here you have a match 3 game that looks animated mediocrely well. So I would kind of lean towards this maybe being a Eastern developer, but maybe not. Western developer, yeah. Looks like more of a Western developer. It's not supporting Japanese at all. No mature content warning at all. It says coming soon. And this isn't in the adult section either. So either this is a case of lewdness with no nudity, or it's censored. And frankly, having to get a censored patch for a match 3 game seems fairly crazy. Speaking of crazy, while I wasn't paying attention here, they managed to wreck me and destroy everything on the field. So then the question will come down to, can we recover fast enough as we're running out of time? He's got nothing as far as cards, so I think he's got no cards, he's got no strategy. So next turn I can almost certainly just attack him. Let's see, next we have Super Weapon Master, which it doesn't really look like anything of interest. Enjoy looks like garbage. Cyclo Helix. Yeah, there might be something to that. Make a YouTube short around that. I will say, one thing that I've kind of noticed is that over the weekend there was a couple of YouTube shorts of mine that didn't seem to perform very well. So maybe it will be fairly random. I'm not paying a lot of attention to them at all, so looking at the analytics on YouTube is a way to ruin your mood for certainty, but it kind of doesn't matter, like, because breakout hits, videos that are getting like 500 views in less than a week on my channel have been just completely non-existent for a long time here now, so there's no reason not to continue to make the YouTube shorts, because even if some of them are getting 50 views in less than a day, that's better than most of my pre-recorded footage. Yeah, questionable certainly as to the long-term number of views you can get from a YouTube short, but whatever. It's not taking all the work. Here is that re-release of the old visual novel. It's all in Japanese here, and clearly this is a very old visual novel with a very old animation style. So there's no reason to really put it on the follow list, but it is, I think, historically significant, particularly to the Japanese, to show, hey, here's a really old, I don't know, PC Engine game or Famicom game, some old PC-like game from a long time ago that is getting re-released, which may be the beginnings of a trend of re-releases of old games, which may be the beginning of the trend of people in Japan being interested in playing games on PC. What I'm gonna do is wait to activate this ability and toss this. Like, that does mean I might be making a mistake, obviously, there's always a chance for that, but it's just no reason, since we won't have a battle turn this phase, to put all your eggs in one basket on the first move. Plus, even if I couldn't toss this card for some reason because of this card, I could toss it with this card. Although that's not the concern. The concern is that I'll end up with 2 of these next turn. Let's go through some of the Gematsu articles. Here, Hogwarts Legacy being delayed, we don't need to talk about again. Alone in the Dark being announced, we don't need to talk about again. Destroy All Humans 2 Reprobed as a new trailer if you want to check that out. Space property development game, Space for Sale, has been announced for PC. Let's watch the blurred trailer of that. I don't know why I'm even bothering to activate this. See, had I put that on the field that turn, then I wouldn't have had anything to play this turn. So you land on kind of a dusty red planet, and you're building these kind of outdoor facilities. It looks like connecting power lines, being chased by monsters. They seem to be kind of weak. Feels a little Pikmin-esque if you got rid of the Pikmin concept. But like terraforming or developing the land, if that is the goal, doesn't seem to be depicted particularly well. A Gothic remake. We have a trailer of that so we could get a general idea. Because the problem with having an article that just combines all of the announcements into one is that that's not going to really motivate me to dive deep and figure out what each game is. So Gothic here looks interesting in this trailer. I'm not sure what the actual gameplay is though. I just see a fairly pretty looking game, and now I'm seeing spider monsters attacking. So I still don't really know what kind of game it is. They say it's an action RPG game, and I question some things there. This guy's playing the same card. Yeah, I'm probably gonna lose here. Yep. Jagged Alliance 3, I probably don't care about. These trailers are not particularly descriptive, which definitely makes me wonder how far into development a lot of these games are. I really feel like they should be more in development. So it's like an XCOM type game, a turn-based positional strategy game. Doesn't look terrible, but that really isn't my style. The Valiant, maybe a different kind of game. It's real-time strategy. Yeah, not particularly anything interesting there. A real-time strategy game called Tempest Rising also announced, which I guess this is possibly a Red Alert clone. Doesn't look bad for a Red Alert clone. I, through Amazon Prime, got a copy of, I think, Diablo 1 Remastered, which, even though it's not on Steam, I half wonder if... I kind of would like to play that. Do I have time to play it? No. Should I play a game I've already played? Probably not, but... yeah, I am slightly tempted on that idea. It's an exciting thought, certainly. I almost feel like I need to get a year ahead before I get into something super long like Diablo 1, which Diablo 1 may not really be that long. Anyways. Destroy all spell cards. Yeah, that Tempest Rising as a game though is intriguing looking. May have been better too. Well, it may not matter. If he special summons 5 characters, I can activate this. While he's thinking about what he's going to do, Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign as a trailer. This one I think is probably too much of a strategy resource game. Yeah, one of those 4X games I would assume. That definitely doesn't catch my attention. Outcast 2 A New Beginning has a trailer. Outcast 2 almost certainly is going to be a game where I'm gonna have to wait until... look, there's like a Stargate there. I'm gonna wait until Outcast 2 is well reviewed before I'd even begin to think about potentially playing Outcast 1, because Outcast 1, while it does have its following, definitely also comes down to a different type of feeling experience. Okay. Alright, well that sucked. Let's send that one. And that one, I guess. Confirm that. Cut that in half. Cut that in half. That didn't activate either. So we're gonna find that none of these work either. Well, so far, oops. Darn it. None of the effects work. I'm screwed. I'm absolutely screwed here. My only hope is that this ability to destroy something is no longer countered. That's my only hope. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, Outcast 2, though, if it gets good reviews, I'd come back and think about it. Moving on, an open-world arcade racing game called Recreation was announced for the PlayStations and Xboxes and PCs, no Switch. Which we get a lot of announcements for racing games and then a lot of disappointment for racing games too. AEW Fight Forever. I don't think there's really a need for me to watch this trailer. Check it out if you're interested. Since I don't think I'm going to be anywhere close to playing a wrestling game anytime in the next decade, or probably ever. Stuntfest World Tour Summer of Stunts. He did it. He summoned too many. Well, that will give him a massively strong character. It's not going to help him, because it'll be in defense mode this turn, and I'll destroy it next turn, unless he can sacrifice it. Right. Flip this. Activate this. And then at least we'll get some attack there. Let him play his hand out, or play his strategy, since I can't really counter it. SpongeBob SquarePants and the Cosmic Shaker. Cosmic Shake. It does kind of feel like this is set in some other narrative, like maybe during Halloween, where they're dressed up. Yeah, it looks like a platforming game, and this may just be the case that 3D platforming may come back, but the price to entry is that you're going to have to play SpongeBob SquarePants games, which I guess that's fine. Like, at a certain point, if you were into 3D platforming, you had to play Mario games, even if you weren't into Mario. We don't need to, once again, talk about them teasing a South Park game. One Period has a teaser trailer for Akane Satomura. Akane Satomura, I assume, is the character. It's obviously a teaser trailer for a visual novel. When you look at this kind of art style of the characters here, it feels like they're starting to evolve away from moe a little bit. You're getting into slightly taller, slightly longer limbs again. Like, maybe in the minds of Japanese, this still is definitely in the category of moe, but that the moe art style was probably half a foot to a foot shorter and slightly smaller limbs. Okay. Flip summon this. And I guess that's all I can do, so let's just try and darn it. Should have attacked those. Yeah. As a teaser trailer, this really is not showing you anything. I see a bunch of anime girls, which doesn't really mean anything at all. Apparently there's multiple game heroines in the game. A hack and slash roguelike called Lethal Horror, Order of the Apocalypse, has been announced for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Which this definitely looks more like a 80s comic book art style. Which doesn't mean I'm gonna immediately reject it just because it looks different. Like, this really could work. Arguably, maybe it won't work as well as it should because it's 3D models with also a 80s or 90s comic book, like Western comic book, edgy Spawn type art style. Let's see. Genshin Impact 3.0 update. The Mourn of 1,000 Roses begins, which you have a collection of characters showing up. The one male character put in the background, or the two male characters shoved in the background so that they can show as much skin as possible on two of the three. Nope, I'd say three of the three female characters. Can't really complain about Genshin Impact though. Like, if people are still playing it and still enjoying it, it seems like it is doing miles more, way more effort to make a decent game compared to any other mobile game, really. Almost any other mobile game. If anything, Genshin Impact potentially should have been put in the... should teach Nintendo and Breath of the Wild a thing or two, because if Zelda was this constantly improving and updating experience, that would be intriguing. Let's see. The Owlboy developer D-Pad Studio announces a 4-player action game called Vikings on Trampolines for PC, which I kind of feel like this is probably a player versus player kind of Smash Brothers clone. Yeah, it definitely looks like it is just a Smash Brothers clone. Unless it is actually trying to be more of a co-op game where the characters have to co-op and play together and stay on trampolines at all time. If that is what it is supposed to be, then I guess so be it. Yeah, the chances of me succeeding here, I think, are pretty low. I need to banish these 2 cards because I can't really attack them without them discarding a card and cutting my attack in half. Shin-Chan, Me and the Professor on Summer Vacation, the Endless 7-Day Journey for PS4 launches August 25th, which arguably Shin-Chan, this game has been announced and teased a little too much, but it is also a fairly big ticket name in Japan, if nowhere else. So it certainly is nowhere as bad as Alice Gear Aegis Concerted Hero Simulacrax, which looks way worse than Shin-Chan and has been blowing its budget advertising the game. Almost certainly if they cut their advertising budget in half and actually polished the visuals on it more, they would have increased their odds of having sales. A game called Ship of Fools launches November 22nd, which, yeah, there might be something to this. And then we already talked about Private Division and Weta Workshop announcing a partnership to publish a new game set in the Middle-earth universe. I add that to my hand. Activate this. As long as this guy can counter anything I do. Yep, that's it. I'm doomed. I lost. God of War Ragnarok Myths of Midgar has a story recap video, which I almost certainly don't want to watch that since I haven't played God of War. Ace Angler Fishing Spirits is coming to the West on October 28th. I believe this was a game that I said very well may not come to the West because of just the heavy emphasis on fishing and particularly fish and aquatic life that really wouldn't be that recognizable to Westerners. So I'm a little surprised it is coming to the West. I wouldn't be surprised if it's mostly a digitally release with very few, if any, physical releases, physical copies. Lord Howe is coming to the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, and Xbox One. The D3 Expo 2022 Disney and Marvel Games Showcase is set for September 9th. So now Disney and Marvel are combining to have a game showcase. I'm a little surprised that wouldn't be through Disney Plus and require people to have a Disney Plus stream, or you could even have a free day of Disney Plus for people to watch the stream that you would announce after it. Which maybe that's what they're going to do. Is they're going to that would be really cool to have the stream on like Twitch and other streaming platforms where people are familiar, and then saying, "Oh, by the way, we're going to give you a free week of Disney Plus or a free day of Disney Plus." Free day is probably too little. Nobody's going to bother for that, but a free week of Disney Plus wouldn't be a terrible idea. It's also something we haven't seen anybody really try, as far as getting to that level where you would give somebody a free week to get their information, get their email, get their credit card info. Probably should be just like a free month. But then Disney Plus is also succeeding so well that why would they do any of that? Right, we are getting more gems, but I also have more I need to do. 13 more duels and 3 more wins as far as Duels Cup daily things. As far as just generic daily things that were overlapping, we just have Duel in the solo mode. It just really highlights that you should always just sit on the Duel and solo mode until there's only 3 or 4 days left, and then do it. Otherwise you're just going to get another Duel and solo mode. You almost have all the extra deck slots for whatever that is actually worth. But as far as gems and everything there, I'm still a little lower than I'd like to be. I ran into some secret packs as an issue. Let's go ahead and open a couple of these and highlight some rares and normals, and maybe a super rare and ultra rare, but probably not. All of these legacy cards still highly unlikely to be useful. I'm just trying to get the number down to probably about 100. It probably wouldn't hurt to get it down to 0. There is an odd thing certainly where nothing is really working in this concept. Opening booster packs, opening secret packs, opening legacy packs, nothing is getting me a ridiculous amount of extra cards to the point where the amount of cards that I have is increasing, or the amount of crafting points I have is increasing. And honestly, I would like to see the game get rid of the separated crafting points between normal, rare, super rare, and ultra rare, and merge those into one currency of crafting points, so that I could start crafting some ultra rare cards that I'm missing, would actually benefit from. If I did that, then I probably would have more of a reason to go and build a new deck and experiment with new cards. But otherwise, as things stand, there's very little motivation around that. Alright. 10 packs we can buy here, and there's no guaranteed ultra rare or super rare. The cards available are hero cards. Let's go ahead and do 10. There's a guaranteed ultra rare and ultra rare and 3 super rares. This is a very bland foil on the outside. And it's 2 cards again, so there are 2 cards specifically, I think, from the pool of the hero cards. At a certain level, this really feels like they should just give you a deck instead of giving you 2 cards towards having a deck. That was that card that represents a episode in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where they draw at the beginning. It's basically, I think, the first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! They draw this kind of smiley face or symbol on their hands all together, and it's like the bonds of friendship is supposed to represent that. Which I think the first generation of Yu-Gi-Oh! Benefited more. It could have benefited even more, but it benefited pretty well by Yu-Gi having friends that played different card styles. Whereas I feel like the second generation and later of Yu-Gi-Oh! Animes more focused on the protagonist and fewer friends. So you ended up seeing probably the same cards getting played multiple times. I can't even look to see how many of the cards I had collected there. Let's see. As far as the Duelist Cup, that is that, I think, as far as rewards. Yeah. That was the cards, and you're not going to get any more cards. Yep. It's just gems going forward from level 16 to max. And then Duelist Cup reward tickets on the second stage. Which I don't know how you get ranked here. Like, I feel like what's going to happen here is more than likely, if I even make it to 20, I will get here. But to be in the top 10,000, well, it says, yeah, between the top 1,000 and 10,000 and be a bronze finisher maybe is doable. And then you seem to get a different title each time, which this, I guess, would be the first time titles start to make some sense. But being between the top 500 and the top 1,000, it's probably not doable. Or the top 100 and the top 500, it's probably not doable. And then the top 11 to top 100, almost certainly not doable. And that's silver finalists. And so you get a icon and a title. So it's icon, titles, and more tickets for more cards. Being in the top 10 seems completely undoable, unless there is something more to it that I don't understand, and that there is more than 10 people in the entire world that can be in the top 10, which I doubt that's the case. Moving on, Sony Interactive Entertainment and Ballistic Moon are working on a new game according to Motion Capture Action Resume. It's still in early stages, says the job listing. Or the job listings on the resume. Where was I as far as games that we were looking at? Let's see, we have this just 3 games left, and then 5 GameDeveloper.com articles or so, and then the fall list cleanup, and then that'll be that. Yeah, this looks like a decent horror game. I'll wait till it actually comes out. Paradiso Guardian. I half suspected it might be like a gay game. But I don't see any mature content. Sexual content, general mature content. Interesting. Well, that is interesting to have a Metroidvania game promised. It's still coming soon. But then also have guy on guy action as an aspect. But that's an interesting idea. I kind of prefer a game like this come out and then people have a censor patch that they have to install by default to censor something, but I'm not going to really complain too much if it's a de-censor patch to de-censor things. I'd like this game to be good, and it kind of looks like it has some potential to be good. And certainly it doesn't bother me to see some hard bodies and some skin there. We see a lot of skin on animated female characters all the time. So yeah, interesting, but once again not coming soon. So I'm just going to completely reject anything that's coming soon until it has a release date, and well, until it actually is released. So we definitely didn't see a lot of adult games this weekend, which is odd. If anything, the pattern seems to be we're seeing less and less adult games. Alone in the Dark remake we don't need to talk about as far as GameToPublic.com. Spider-Man Remastered topped 66,000 concurrent players on Steam at launch. The Unity board rejected the merger proposal, which we don't need to cover again. Private Division, we don't need to cover again. Microsoft's Xbox One sold less than half of Sony's PlayStation 4. Microsoft famously stopped reporting sales numbers for the Xbox One, but it recently admitted that the PlayStation 4 outsold it by a wide margin. Okay. Wasn't it also the Xbox One, though, that had a massive amount of backlash against it because it tried to be always online, and Sony just ate their lunch because of that? I guess that shows that negative press can go through the life of a console. That would be my assumption, because inherently, if I saw a slickdeals.net sale right now for an Xbox One or a Xbox Series S that was cheap, or a Series X if it was really cheap, I would buy it. Like, it's I'd actually not buy it for myself, but I'd buy it for somebody I gave all my Xbox 360 games to, because of the backwards compatibility aspect there. And frankly, if I got one really cheap that was a cheap Blu-ray player, I would get rid of my PlayStation 3 at that point, because there isn't a lot of reason to maintain a PlayStation 3 now. It's just been sitting in a corner. I saw a surround sound receiver, a Pioneer, on Slick Deals, and it's like a 9.2 Dolby Atmos thing, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'd really love to upgrade my receiver, but it was also $900, and I'm like, nah, I can't justify that. I wouldn't even ever use it. I have several surround sound receivers and speaker sets, and I'm recording footage with headphones on 99.9% of the time, so I never use the surround sound. Those were definitely gadgets of a previous time when I was much younger and much more into just watching TV and anime in particular. Maybe made myself deaf also, listening to surround sound too loud. Crusader Kings 3 DLC to receive a price increase, says Paradise, which, yeah, that sucks, certainly. And then Disney is going to premiere a video game showcase during D23, which I guess D23 might be a bigger Disney event to announce things. Honestly, Disney should have been promoting a lot more of its content, because I think it does have some decent content. Here we have the Sinking City. I thought there was this whole fight between Frogwares and Nacon around this. Seemingly, people stopped caring about that. Let's see if we can show a graph here. When it first launched in February 26, 28, let's see. This version of the game is blatant thievery by Nacon Games. Please buy it from the actual level. Do not buy it buy this game as it's Nacon's hacked version. If you really want to play it, go to Frogware's website and buy it. Buy a copy from them directly. Bad publisher. Yeah. So there's this whole controversy around it. And honestly, I'm not sure it wasn't really Frogwares. What's funny though is that actually adds some relevancy to it, because you got more reviews even if they are negative reviews. So I think there's no reason for me to not put it on the wish list. At least think about it. Now, does that particularly mean I'm supporting like Nacon or hurting Frogwares? I mean, that's the question, because Frogwares, I've bought quite a few of their Sherlock Holmes games and haven't gotten anywhere to playing any of those. And then Nacon Games has Steel Rising coming out, Zorro Chronicles. Is this game? No, this game is probably not relevant enough. Frogwares, I think, has a habit of taking things to the public. You know, you have Outcast Second Contact, which I think is a remaster. Styx Shards of Darkness, which I think is a sequel to Styx. A lot of wrestling games, a lot of racing games, and yeah. So yeah, the Zorro game, I'm gonna put this on the follow list. There's definitely talk of a Zorro game being something. Probably no to that, but I'll put it on the follow list. Here we have a game that obviously was completely removed from Steam. Rogue Legacy 2 on sale for $18.74. Well, after having to replace my countertop oven, I'm definitely in the hole at this point. Well, this is rated positively, very positively. See, it seems to be half visual novel, half action RPG game. Alright, well, I'll put it on the wish list. The Sin Collector Repentless. Now, would I really buy that? Maybe, maybe not. I can definitely tell the reason why I put this on the follow list is because of this charcoal pencil drawing art style, and it's rated very positively, so I'll put that on the wish list. Yeah, it really is getting down to the point though where if I'm going a whole year without buying any games or buying very little games, then what's the point of the wish list in the first place? It becomes more of a hope list at that point. This is an interesting kind of puzzle looking game. It's rated very positively. Make sure things are out of early access. So put that on the wish list. The Shore VR looks pretty, but it's mostly negative, so we'll remove that. The Shore regular is the same game, mixed in the last 30 days, mostly positive overall. Came out February 2021. Well, I don't want to eliminate it completely, but I'm giving it too much of a time. The Shape of the Ground Steam Edition is mixed, so we can remove that. Then the Shadows Lengthen has no relevancy. It's early access from November of 2021. Should I give that more time? I'll be generous and say yes, but I really shouldn't. And then here we have an adult game called The Shadow of Ydra. Make sure it's all YouTube family friendly. There you go, you've got anime girl with live 2D chest bouncing. It's a side-scrolling zombie shooter platforming game. It's mixed right now, rated very positively overall. It's adult, it's $10.99. I think I can say yes to this. It is in the adult section, so there obviously is content here that they are not talking about, I would assume. High level of nudity and pornography and a certain level of violence. And they're definitely highlighting violence here. I wish I could think of a better system, certainly, as far as how you would cover or play or talk about a game like that. Because even if it was gifted to me or if I played it, I just don't know how to potentially give a review on that without making any content. Maybe there's some room in the new YouTube Shorts to talk about that too. Could I in a minute talk about a adult game or review an adult game? Could I say anything in a minute is the interesting question. This one I don't think has any relevancy. 15 reviews since November 2021. And it just looks like a kind of programming puzzle game of something that quality I'm not particularly interested in. Yeah. Sequence 2. See what we did with the Sequence 1. Sequence 1 is rated very positively. So you know what? I'll put this on the wish list. And then I will remove, or I'll leave this on the default. Nope, I'll remove this from the default list. And just kind of make an odd choice in that aspect. Yeah, I suppose if I could figure out how to talk in like 30 minutes, in a minute, under a minute, then maybe there would be something there, but you'd still have to show content that is YouTube family friendly. But getting a minute of content is not hard. Even in an adult game, getting a minute of content wouldn't be hard. There was this story where Moby Games will now let developers remove AKA listings from their profile. Apparently, by default, Moby Games was adding AKAs of like people who went under different names, which also included dead names, as it were, of transgendered people. Um, Inherently, this is the exact opposite of the call from the IGDA, the International Game Developers Association, to create a more uniform, connected system to update and ensure accuracy as far as naming people who worked on games. There was this whole argument that the UK and Europe made, the right to be forgotten, the right to have information about you taken down from the internet. It's an anti-free speech argument, certainly, and at a certain point, the idea of dead naming when you're talking historically accurate things, when you're talking about a person who was going by that name at the time that they worked on the game, I don't really call that dead naming. In a lot of ways, dead naming is in danger of becoming the next SJW slacktivist cause, where people are just going to be pushed to their limits to try to accommodate people. Like, I get it, certainly, that people don't want to be called things that they find offensive to their face now, but that doesn't inherently mean you can rewrite history, rewrite reality, and eliminate what you were called in the past. If somebody called me a nasty name, or if there was like a bully nickname I had as a kid, I don't recall, but if I had something like that in kindergarten, let's just say that they called me ugly or they called me stupid, I can't say, no, that's my dead name. You can't say that. You can't mention in a historical perspective and text that I was called that. That's just not realistic. At a certain point, without going into a rant here, people need to realize that they can't control reality. They can only control how they react to reality and how they accept reality. And people actively moving towards being irate just because somebody makes a slip up and calls somebody by an old name is just not helpful or acceptable. There is also certainly a point where the ask just gets too much and people just don't have the emotional energy to accommodate somebody who is so needy, so demanding. But yeah, Moby Games is certainly going to allow for that, which I disagree with, honestly, because that's anti-consumer at the just on the first level of it. If you're looking for games made by a developer, or you're trying to avoid games made by a certain developer and they have transitioned or changed their name in any other form or fashion, and then they can just hide that is not good for the consumer to be an informed buyer. They make the claim buyer beware, but then at every turn and opportunity, almost every industry tries to make it impossible for a buyer to be beware and informed. And when it sounds like you almost certainly could very quickly become one of these developers that just makes a ton of garbage games and then changes their name and then makes a ton more garbage games, and there's no way to connect the dots and go, oh, this person is notorious for making terrible games. The MISCON had a Cyan State of the Union and a video talk. They talked about missed updates with hand tracking, note taking, and more in the Oculus Quest version, I believe. They showed off some brand new Firmament footage. Cyan Ventures, which I assume is their publishing branch, have updates on Area Man Lives in the Last Clockwinder, and then the collaboration with Walkabout Mini Golf to bring you Mist Island and then what they say is, quote, spicy Q&A. What's interesting here is you have a picture of two people talking and the microphones awkwardly in front of their faces. This is definitely a scenario where if you're going to stage a picture here, get some lapel mics or put these microphones above their heads and capture the audio that way, or put the microphones right in front of them so they can just hold them, or like, this is a very odd way to do it. At the very least, put this one on the other side so you get this central image. But what I really wanted to point out here is you have two fairly young looking people from Cyan. This is definitely the next generation, or the second generation of Cyan. People who potentially grew up playing Myst, not people who actually worked on the first Myst, because the people that worked on Myst 1 are frankly a little too old and need to hand over the reins to the new kids. Alright, let me scroll down my Twitter feed real quickly here. Let's see. Nintendo 64 Switch Online adds a Wave Race 64 on August 19th. Let's see. We still are managing to wrap up things fairly quickly, and I'm definitely appreciating that. No longer am I getting stuck in these 3 to 4 hour streams, and I'm not certain what I did to improve, but maybe it's just that time of year where there's less games coming out, or something else, or I'm just moving faster. Yeah, let's see. I guess that's gonna be it. There really wasn't any new news. I started pretty late this evening. I keep starting pretty late. I was awake at like 6 in the morning, but I definitely wouldn't have not been mentally alert at that point. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to further follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.